Tales from the Trenches. Stories forged in the fires of experience. Storytelling is one of the oldest forms of communication known to mankind, and we encourage you to join us and share your stories. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining Tales from the Trenches. Gerald, Bergren, thanks for joining us today. How's it going?
It's going great.
So we were having a little discussion about Tales from the Trenches and stories from the field and how to prepare new technicians for that first day out on your own. And it might not even be your first day. It just may be a day. I mean, you might have been out in the field for 6 months, 9 months, a year, and you get sent out to a job and you go, oh man, what am I doing?
Yeah. Blow something up here.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about that fear. Let's talk about those things we don't normally hear. Because, we can go through training, but are we going to go through training on what do you do when something goes wrong, when something goes bad? Because we're going to have those experiences. So let's talk a little bit about that and some of your own personal experiences.
Yeah, I'd say that's one of the things. I didn't go in a formal trade school. Did classes like with Johnstone University and things like that. So
that's where I came from.
Get some book knowledge, and so.
Right.
But yeah, there's the book knowledge doesn't tell you, say, hey, what if the thing catch on fire, or what happens if something goes sideways, and you blow up a compressor.
What if I let the smoke out?
Yeah, exactly. Where's that magic smoke?
How do you smoke back in?
Yeah, exactly. Hey, that's not supposed to. I've never seen a thermostat smoke. Where's that?
Right. Is that capacitor puking? What happens if I turn this back on?
Why are there sparks flying out of this thing? It's supposed to be normal. What the heck? Hey, this compressor makes this funky sound when I turn it on. Is that normal? No. So yeah, there's been a lot of that, and a lot of what I had learned was just trial by fire. And as I mentioned earlier, it's just that, I had a really good guy teach me a lot of stuff. And sometimes what he would teach me would be just, trial by fire. And just, he'd give me enough knowledge to do something and, to be safe with it and say, here, go to it. And give me a call if you got any questions. Well, I thought one time I was changing out a compressor that, hey, I got this. It was a walk-in cooler and changed it a lot. And one of the things I couldn't remember was he told me was, how do you charge your refrigerant? There's a couple valves, just dump the stuff in there and fired that thing up. And oh man, it sounded horrible. It sounded like it was eating a bag of hammers. Just like, oh Lord have mercy, what I do to this thing?
What did I do wrong here? Let me backtrack and think about this.
Yeah. So I flooded the compressor, and so yeah, he was laughing his head off though. And it was a good experience though. Like, yeah, don't flood the compressor when you first, charge it up. And so there were some definitely good learning experiences from those. But that's the thing, I learned a lot was that, you will make mistakes. It's just what's going to happen. It's not a perfect world out there, and stuff does hit the fan.
And trying to prepare yourself for that. I almost called this series the Do As I Say, Not As I Did series instead of Tales from the Trenches. Because we have these experiences that we need to share, and we need to prepare people mentally for that. Because it's difficult when we learn how to do something. We go out on our own. Now all that pressure is on us, and hopefully it's going to go right. But what happens when it actually goes wrong? How do you walk up to that homeowner and say, I know your unit was working fine before I got here to service it, but now it's not?
Yeah. And I've had that conversation with a few customers, and especially there's these people who are they're like, these highly important people. And I told them, well, guess what? You're not going to have heat for a few days. They're like, what? Were supposed to do a maintenance. Right. Yeah, I was doing a maintenance and something broke. And your system's so old, I don't have that part. So
that's exactly right.
And sometimes you just have that honest conversation, and even though they yell and scream and dance on top of your head for doing that, you just kind of have to say, yep, I made the mistake and I apologize. We'll get it done as fast as we can, and just start to have a little bit of thicker skin from it. So
And having an honest professional conversation about things. I always bring it back to the same analogy as, when you go to the doctor. Do we go to the doctor because something is wrong, or do we go to the doctor to try to find something before it actually goes wrong? So a lot of what our job is for that. We're there for preventative maintenance. And if you think about, say, on that furnace, there are a lot of things inside of that furnace. You have tubing that could be dry rot and just sitting there waiting to be touched, so it's going to crack and be brittle. You have collector boxes on condensing furnaces that could have small cracks on them. And as you start moving things around and actually looking to find problems, you can find problems that may have not presented a fault before that may now. There's so many things. Metal on 80% furnaces coming off from a flue pipe that may have been barely holding together, and you get in there and start touching it, and all of a sudden it just becomes brittle.
Yeah.
It's like a cookie, and it just crumbles in your hand. And you have to go to the homeowner and go, I have to shut this down right now. Even though it was working when I got here, I have to shut this down and fix it properly. And that's not always the easiest conversation to have, but it's the reality.
Yeah, it is. And yet also just the honesty of it is what I think is, been the best part, for the customer, is that it's like, it was working when I got here. And then, like you said, got brittle joints because even being like, I remember one time finding a 90%er and the flue pipe, just had a weak joint in the PVC. And I showed up and, oh, let me clean this thing, and pop, oops. But thankfully something like that's easily repaired. But, having the honest conversation with the customer too is like, hey, this is just not good. We need to get this fixed properly. And, it may have been attributed to what I did for the maintenance or whatever. But, if we have that honest conversation, mainly people really appreciate that.
They do.
And, then they just appreciate you more and want to have you back, knowing, hey, this guy is honest at least. And maybe he screwed up and broke my system, but he was honest about it. So he didn't try to hide it. And, oh yeah, that was there when I got here.
Right. And I find documentation is very, very important. If we see something that is bad, if it's say it's a piece of metal on a flue pipe and we go to touch it and we stick our finger through it. Grab a photo of it, or take the homeowner down and show them, look, this is actually what's going on. So this was so paper thin that when I touched it, my finger went through it. This should have been changed probably a long time ago. It just wasn't found. And so now we have to fix it. It's one of these scenarios that now we are aware of a situation, and that's what I'm here for, is to prevent further issues. So now let's discuss the proper way to move past this. Let's get this fixed and get this back into proper operation.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, especially I'm up on the coastline here. We got a lot of corrosion on these heat pump coils.
Oh, man. All the salt water, I can only imagine.
You sneeze on it and the coil's gone. I'm like, oh my gosh. Let's close that up and see how. But, a lot of the times it's just telling the customer, it's like, look, you live on the salt air, man, and your salt air is eating your coil up. And so, having that conversation with a customer is like, I show up to do the maintenance. As soon as you just barely touch that thing, crumbles up. You take a service door off or something, and the whole coil starts to crumble in front of you.
Wow. Yeah.
And the good thing, like you said, was have a picture, and you can document that. And that not only helps the company, but it helps you out too. That it's nice to have, the tools like that to take those pictures and document. So it just saves everybody from a lot of headache. And, I remember before we didn't have those things, and it just kind of like the back and forth of he said, she said, and you just have to also live with that too. It's like, well, okay, we'll just have to eat this one, as it were, because we don't have, all the documentation per se, or photos and stuff like that. We didn't carry cameras with us as part of our tool bag.
I wish I did. I had so many people, ask about some of these crazy jobs that I used to work on, and scenarios that I encountered, and I go, all I have is in my memory, because we didn't have the digital technology. We didn't have phones that had cameras in them 20 years ago. And so that has changed things. So now we can send homeowners photos. I can remember my first, you're talking about corroded coils. I remember my first condenser. I was a young technician. I was out on a call on my own. It was supposed to be just a service. And if anyone's encountered a condenser that's been in a backyard that's had a dog regularly urinating on it, you can see a little corrosion at the bottom. But boy, when you hit it with a garden hose and it just disintegrates, and like the whole coil just goes poof. And you look at it and go, oh my gosh, what just happened? So I actually went to the homeowner and went, okay, I got to borrow you for a minute, because you're just going to have to see this for yourself to understand that I didn't just do this intentionally. So I took them out and actually handed them the garden hose and said, why don't you go ahead and wash this, because a regular preventative maintenance is to keep the condenser coil clean. Go ahead and wash this a little bit. And when they seen all of the condenser just crumbling and falling out, they went, what caused that? And then I was able to go, well, that's from the urine from the dog. But I wanted you to see that I wasn't out here doing this, because when I first seen it, I just went, what do I do now?
Yeah.
So I actually brought them in. So it's very important to keep that homeowner aware. When you see something that's not right, step back for a second, think about it, and then start, figuring out how to properly address this and be professional and be honest about it. They want you there to catch things before they go wrong. So when they go wrong, maybe even unexpectedly, you just have to be prepared for that conversation.
Yeah, like I said, just being professional about it, Yeah, professional is not covering up and like, I don't know where that came from kind of stuff. But having that, tough skin to own up to your mistakes or own up to finding things is, definitely key, because, a lot of people just appreciate that right off the bat. I mean, some may still yell and scream at you, but still they appreciate that honesty of just like, oh, thank you for finding this and helping me out. I mean, you talk about the dog on the coil, and I remember finding one at a renter's house, and the landlord almost skewered the tenants for it. Well,
right.
Hey, what's between you two is between you two.
Right. I'm here to do my job.
This is, I'm just here to do my job. This is what I found. And so, also being that go-between of like, hey, you're the representing the landlord, and having that go-between kind of thing also, can be, the tenant may hate you, but landlord loves you, and
right.
You just can't make everybody happy. So
No.
it's just sometimes you end up being the bad guy no matter what. But if you keep it professional and just be honest about it, and be upfront with people and let them know, that really helps when you have those nuts moments, as it were. So
absolutely. And it may not even be something that we've created. I remember one scenario that I had just did a service and maintenance on an air conditioner, and I got a call a few days later that the AC was out, and the homeowner was irate. You were just here servicing this. How could I be having problems? You were just here. And I'm like, well, so let's calm down. Let's step back and let's find out what the problem is, and then we'll address it together. And I was still pretty young. I mean, it was a little nerve-wracking. The homeowner was very, very irate. So I show up to the call. They're just barking at me all the way, down the stairs to take a look at things, and out in the yard, they're just barking. So I put the gauges on it, and there's zero refrigerant in the system.
Oh no!
And I go, whoa, okay, hold on here. So either this is something maybe I did, maybe there's something that I missed. Well, let's walk through this. So kind of looking around, trying to find it, put a little bit of nitrogen on it, and boy, it just drops really quick. Oh, man. Okay. So we've got something. So I keep the homeowner informed. I said, this was full of refrigerant when I was here. Now it is empty. And there's a leak in this thing pretty significantly that has happened since I was here. So let's spend some time trying to find it. So we're walking around. And so I walk back downstairs, and there's like 5 teenage boys all hanging out downstairs, right? And they're all acting a little bit funny. And so I've got the homeowner with me, and I'm looking around, and I look up, and I'm following the line set, and all of a sudden I see a wet spot on the line set. And I go, oh, what do we got here? So I walk the homeowner over. I said, so we shouldn't be seeing wet spots on the insulation. I said, something's happened here. So I take my knife, and I open up the insulation right there, and there's this little bitty hole right in the suction line.
Ooh.
And then they go, did you miss that when you were here? No, I don't think that was actually here. Well, what would cause that? Did you puncture that?
Mm-hmm.
No, I didn't. Let's think about this for a second. So I'm standing there, and I'm looking at this insulation, and I look across the wall where all these boys are hanging out on the couch, and right behind them is a dartboard.
Ooh.
But it's like 15, 18, 20 feet away from where this line set is, right? It's pretty good ways. It's not standard dart throwing distance. It's over by the stairs.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at this, and I walk over to the dartboard, and I grab the dart, and I walk over, and I insert it into the suction line, and it fits. And the homeowner looks at me really funny. And I said, so which one of the boys was trying to see how hard they could throw a dart?
Mm-hmm.
And the entire scenario changed. Then I was the savior, because I found the problem. I called the boys out, and then you're right. It went from the homeowner conversation with me to the homeowner conversation with the boys.
Yeah.
Change the dynamics, but sometimes we have to keep that calm. I mean, it's
Yeah.
rough to try to be able to think when you have that pressure going on, that homeowner just barking at you like a dog.
Yeah. Yeah. Maintaining that calm is key for sure. I mean, especially when remember working on one of the newer style electric furnace with the relays and stuff. I went to check amps on one of these things, and little did I know, I pulled the amp clamp off, and everything's all crammed in there, and something pulls off one of the connections. Didn't realize it was loose, and you couldn't see it, and the whole thing
Grounded.
just grounded. Yeah, it went fried everywhere. I went, oh man, that's not good.
How do you explain it?
How do you explain that to the customers? Yeah. Well, I was just doing the maintenance. But you take a deep breath and, gather your collection. And even though, like say, customers barking at you, saying how, calling you, insulting you. And
right. Did you just fry my furnace?
Yeah, you fried my furnace, you blankety blankety. And, and like say, it sounds degrading, because that's the hard part, when they start to degrade you and stuff like that. But again, you just kind of have to take a deep breath, and collect yourself, and keep that professional mindset of, I'm being honest here, and we'll do what we can to expedite this and get this repaired as fast as we can. And keeping your cool is definitely, because obviously you gain nothing if you start barking back at the customer. And,
that's right.
There's nothing that helps with that. I mean, if you maintain your cool, it's amazing how much that will calm down the customer too, when you do something, kind of dumb, and fry something. That's obviously your fault, but if you can maintain your cool about it, because our normal reaction is to bark back. But we, as the professional, have to maintain our cool to not bark, as it were. So, yeah.
Fantastic stuff. Gerald, I sure appreciate you hanging out with us today, and great insight on keeping your cool.
Sure.